Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take a monumental stack of sources and profound wisdom, and we try to boil it down to the essential, actionable insights you need.
And today, our mission is, it's about as deep as it gets.
It really is. We are digging into the incredibly practical, step-by-step guidance from the Buddhist nun, Ayya Khema.
That's right. She was a really remarkable figure, born in Berlin in 1923, had to flee Nazism, ended up in China, Pakistan, all over.
And was eventually ordained in Sri Lanka, authoring 25 books.
Yeah, and our sources really give us her complete manual. It's meditation, insight, transcendence, the whole thing. So our goal here is to find the quickest route, to understanding the core elements for spiritual freedom.
And she's so good at the nuts and bolts, the actual technique.
Extraordinarily clear.
Okay, so let's unpack this journey. We should probably start with the fundamental philosophical challenge that really kickstarted this whole thing thousands of years ago.
All right, it all begins with the recognition that just chasing external happiness is, well, it's a dead end.
The Buddha himself, Siddhartha Gautama, he had everything, right? Every possible luxury.
He was a prince. He had it all. And yet he realized that none of that indulgence, none of the gratification, it doesn't deliver any kind of lasting happiness.
In fact, it did the opposite. It actually prevented him from seeing reality clearly.
Exactly. And that's a lesson that, it's maybe more relevant now than ever before. Our whole society is kind of built on that indulgence.
The relentless pursuit of the next pleasure, the next gadget.
It's the ultimate modern trap. So after realizing that luxury failed, he just abandoned it. He plunged into the total opposite extreme.
6 years of really brutal asceticism.
Mortifying his body. But that path, it failed just as completely. All it did was add another layer of suffering. It didn't bring any wisdom.
So neither extreme worked. And the solution he proposed, which is the absolute foundation for all of this practice, is the middle path.
It is the central pillar. The middle path is a life that it carefully avoids both extremes. Not hedonism, not asceticism.
In Ayya Khema's terms, it's a life defined by simplicity.
Exactly, providing your necessities, but nothing more. It's about systematically eliminating the non-essentials.
And what's so striking about this path, and we should say this right at the top, is how practical and how lacking in mystique it is.
Oh, that's crucial for you to grasp. There are almost no rituals, no secret initiations, no hidden knowledge.
The teaching itself mirrors the path. It's simple.
It's a graduated path, step by step. It starts exactly where you are right now with your ordinary everyday experience, and it just guides you gradually toward that final freedom.
The very fact that we're even sitting here able to discuss these concepts, let alone try to practice them, is something Ayya Khema points to as a moment for real gratitude.
Well, think about the numbers. There are over 5 billion people on this planet who right now are either completely unaware of these teachings or they just don't have the resources, internal or external, to dedicate any time to this.
So to be among the few who even hear this authentic transmission, it's like winning a lottery.
It's statistically exceptional look, and she says it should warrant joy and gratitude.
Why joy and gratitude specifically? Why those emotions?
Because the mind alone, your intellect, it's not enough for this practice. You could be the most brilliant philosopher in the world, but if your heart stays closed, this path is, well, it's inaccessible.
Because meditation is always connected with feeling.
Always. She calls it our heart quality. You need that emotional openness, that vulnerability. It's not just about sterile intellectual concepts. You have to take this path with your whole being.
Okay, so with that foundation set, let's move into the actual structure. If this is a building we're constructing, the ground floor has to be morality or sila. This is the absolute prerequisite.
Yes, it's the essential foundation. And she makes a really vital distinction here. This isn't a morality that's imposed on you from the outside.
Not from a church or a government or just cultural pressure.
No, it's a self-imposed training that you take on voluntarily. You decide to refrain from certain actions because you see the harm they do, primarily to yourself.
So what's the immediate payoff? Because we usually think of morality as a sacrifice, restraint.
The payoff is immediate, and it's actually incredibly appealing in our modern anxious world. She calls the result blameless bliss.
Blameless bliss.
This training, it develops this unshakable inner security. You know you haven't harmed others. You know you haven't harmed yourself.
And that deep contentment. That must be an incredible antidote to modern life.
Just think about it. How much of our mental energy is spent on regret? On guilt over things we've said or done, worrying about what other people think.
A huge amount.
Blameless bliss is this deep contentment that comes from just having a clear conscience. There's no sense of omission or commission, and that results in peaceful sleep, clear decisions, and just an inner ease that no amount of external success can buy.
It's the immediate return on investment for being ethical.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's a powerful anchor for the mind. Once we have that moral foundation, we move right into the direct training of the mind, and specifically this idea of guarding the sense doors.
Right. And I know from the sources that this is often the most poorly understood part of the whole practice.
People get it wrong.
They do, especially Westerners. They read it too literally and think they have to somehow avoid seeing things or hearing things.
Which, if you tried to do that in daily life, you'd just be paralyzed. You couldn't function.
The effort alone would lead to immense frustration, so that's not it.
So what is the actual practice then?
The practice is to prevent the mind from grasping at what she calls major signs or secondary characteristics. It's not about stopping the raw input from your senses.
It's about stopping the mental elaboration that comes right after.
Precisely.
Let's use that concrete example from the sources, the piece of chocolate. Let's walk through that chain reaction.
Okay, so your eye sees the chocolate. The raw contact is just color and shape. Brown, square, maybe a little shiny. That's it. That's the sense contact.
But the mind doesn't stop there.
Never. The mind, which is always ready to elaborate, immediately adds the secondary characteristic. Ah, chocolate. That tastes delicious. I know that brand. I want a piece.
But I'm on a diet. But maybe just one.
That whole internal monologue, that entire chain of thought, that is the mental elaboration.
So guarding the senses means stopping that inner monologue right there.
Yeah.
Before the desire or, the aversion even starts to solidify.
Exactly that. The goal is to experience reality in its simplest, most direct form. Sound is just sound, color is just color, shape is just shape.
All the difficulty, the desire, the envy, the attachment, it all comes from the story we tell ourselves about the sense contact, not the contact itself.
You confuse the map for the territory every single time.
This feels so relevant today with social media. The image flashes up on your screen. That's the raw sense contact.
Right.
But then the secondary characteristic kicks in instantly. Comparison, envy, judgment, greed.
That's the perfect modern analogy. Guarding the sense doors means looking at that image and just registering light and color, not immediately spiraling into, wow, their life is better than mine, or I want that car, or I hate that opinion.
When you stop that mental story, the energy that fuels greed and hate, it just has nowhere to go.
It just dissipates right at the source.
So we've established that this training can't just be for when you're sitting on a meditation cushion. You've only got one mind to train.
Exactly. So mindfulness, or sati, it has to extend into your daily life.
Which brings us to the first foundation, mindfulness of the body, Kayanapassana. Why the body? Why is that so important?
The body is paramount because it's the most palpable, objective, tangible thing in our existence. You can touch it, you can see it, you can feel its weight.
So it gives us the best chance to get the mind and body in the same place at the same time.
Literally. And the practice is to focus your attention on the most mundane, repetitive actions.
Like walking, eating, opening a door.
Walking, standing, sitting, lifting your fork, chewing, swallowing, showering. And the why behind this is profound. It instantly interrupts mental turmoil.
How so?
Because you cannot be genuinely angry or consumed by lust or planning some complex future while you are mindfully watching the sensation of your foot lifting and falling in a controlled walk.
The two mental states are mutually exclusive.
Completely. Sustained attention on the body just prevents the mental turbulence from taking hold.
So the body becomes an anchor in the storm of our thoughts. But mindfulness, which is just bare attention, it needs a guide, right?
Right.
And that guide is clear comprehension, Sampajanya.
Yes. Mindfulness just knows. It pays attention. Clear comprehension, though, that uses wisdom to judge whether our intentions, the purpose behind our actions, are wholesome or skillful.
It's the moral compass directing the mindfulness.
It is. It ensures you aren't just mindfully walking to the fridge to binge on that chocolate we were talking about.
And the sources detail 4 specific checks that clear comprehension applies before an action.
It's a mental checklist, and it's designed to slow down that impulsive reaction. First, you ascertain the purpose. Is this action useful? Does it serve a clear, wholesome purpose?
And second, the skillful means.
Right. Do I have the best means to achieve this purpose? Could I be more skillful or more gentle or more effective here?
This seems like a great way to just stop rushing into poorly thought out actions.
It is. Because if you realize your means are clumsy or they're driven by anger, you pause. The third check is vital. Is it compatible with the Dhamma? Is it wholesome?
Is this action going to lead to less suffering, basically?
Yeah.
Would the Buddha approve?
It forces you to check your motivation against the highest standard. And finally, the fourth check, which is the feedback loop.
The review of the accomplishment.
After the action is done, you ask, did it work? If I wanted to resolve a conflict, did my words actually do that, or did they just make it worse? If it didn't work, why not? Was my purpose flawed? Were my means unskillful?
And that whole four-step process is how wisdom refines action. It transforms impulse into a conscious choice.
Exactly.
So once we've built this foundation of morality and learned to root our consciousness in the body, we can finally address the universal reality the Buddha identified. Dukkha, or unsatisfactoriness.
Right.
This brings us into our second section, looking at the practical engine of meditation. The breath and thought. Anapanasati.
And first, we have to acknowledge the enemy here. The sources describe the untrained mind as just working constantly, day and night, planning, wanting, regretting.
And then dreaming from night to morning. It never gets a moment's rest.
Never. If you asked your physical body to function like that, you'd be out of commission in days.
Yet we subject our minds to this relentless, non-directional thinking, and then we wonder why we feel anxious or why life doesn't turn out like we planned.
That constant, nonstop mental movement is the foundation of dukkha. It's the first noble truth manifesting right here, right now, in your head.
And the way to train this restless mind is through meditation on the breath.
Anapanasati, yes. The breath is the perfect subject. It's always there, it's always changing, and it's always in the now.
So Ayya Khema outlines 3 primary techniques for practicing this while sitting. Let's start with the most traditional one.
That would be the one-pointed focus. For this technique, you notice the sensation of the breath only at the nostrils, just that one small spot.
As the breath moves in and out, you just keep your attention right there.
And because the attention is so constrained to such a single small point, it's the most productive way to achieve really profound calm and mental sharpness. The mind has nowhere else to go. It becomes unwavering.
But not everyone finds that easy. So what's the alternative for people who need a broader focus?
There's visualization. You can experience the breath as a cloud, maybe a cool white mist, filling the body on the in-breath and enveloping you on the out-breath.
Or some people visualize it taking a shape.
Right. It's less one-pointed, for sure, but it is infinitely better than just getting lost in discursive thinking about your day. It keeps the mind engaged with a wholesome, present object.
And finally, the third technique, following the flow, which seems to involve the entire interior of the body.
This is where you trace the breath's movement. You follow it from the nostrils, down the throat, into the lungs, feel the stomach expand, and then you follow it all the way back out.
This sounds good for people who are really sensitive to their inner bodily sensations.
It is. Tracing that flow keeps the mind connected to your internal being, and it reduces the pull of everything happening outside. The key instruction here, though, for all 3 methods is crucial.
Pick one and stick with it.
Use only one method at a time, and do not change methods during a single meditation session. Consistency is what builds concentration.
Now let's talk about the inevitable, distraction. The mind is going to stray over and over again. But instead of judging ourselves, Ayya Khema says we should turn that into a tool for insight.
The distraction is a gift. It shows you the mechanism of your own mind.
This is the labeling practice.
Right. So when the mind strays, you resist the urge to just label it thinking. Instead, you use the very first quick label that comes to mind. Past, future, worry, planning, nonsense.
You just categorize the thought. I imagine my label would be grocery list a lot of the time.
Exactly. We often find the mind is just churning out these circular, mundane, useless thoughts. Hence, the label nonsense is often very appropriate.
And you have to use the first label that comes up. No overthinking it.
Crucially, if you start trying to refine the label, wait, is this really planning or is it more like hoping? You've just induced a new chain of thought. You're defeating the purpose. Just label it, then gently return to the breath.
And what's the profound realization that comes from this simple, repetitive act?
The mind itself begins to see the futility of its own activity. It becomes glaringly obvious that this kind of discursive thinking is disturbing, it produces no real results, and it just goes around in these exhausting circles.
And that conviction, born from direct experience, makes the mind finally surrender.
It accepts the value of stillness. It accepts the value of just staying with the breath.
This leads directly to the core wisdom here, being present now. It's such a simple concept, but it's the hardest thing to maintain.
It's entirely absurd, and yet it's entirely true. We only ever live in the present moment. The past is gone. It's just a memory. The future is nothing but a concept, a hope, or a fear.
And when the future finally arrives, what do we call it?
We call it the present. You can't watch a breath that has passed or one that's still in the future. You can only watch the one that is happening right now.
So, training the mind to be with the current breath is the only way to genuinely experience life, and the only way to gain wisdom.
Because wisdom requires direct, undistorted access to the reality of the present. The power of that cannot be overstated. When you're fully present, you are efficient, you are creative, you're empathetic, and you're not suffering over things that haven't happened or things you can't change.
We've built the moral foundation, grounded the mind and the body, anchored it to the breath. Now we can move into section 3, which deals with the very mechanism of suffering itself, feeling and non-reaction.
And the source material says even pain is a teaching opportunity.
Any painful feeling, physical or mental, is useful.
Immensely useful. It provides 2 vital lessons about our habitual, automatic way of being.
What's the first lesson?
Lesson 1 is that our immediate instinctive reaction to pain, I hate this, I want to get rid of this, that reaction is the precise mechanism that traps us in the round of rebirth, in samsara.
The craving to change our experience is what creates the cycle.
And the second lesson is about the ultimate futility of that reaction.
You can't win.
Nobody can win the battle of eliminating all pain while demanding to keep all pleasure. You just can't control feelings that way. They're impermanent, they're conditioned. We spend our life trying to fool ourselves that we can have only the good and banish the bad. It's not just unskillful, it's exhausting.
So let's look at how suffering is generated moment by moment by tracing this chain of suffering or karma making.
We can trace it right back to the wheel of dependent arising. Let's use the example of a sore knee while you're meditating. First, there's sense contact, the foot pressing on the thigh.
That contact generates feeling, in this case, unpleasant.
From that feeling arises perception. That's the mental label. This is painful, or this is unbearable.
And the moment right after perception, that's the pivotal moment.
That's the crucial point. Perception leads instantly to the impulsive mental reaction, the sankhara, the karma-making thought, I don't like this, I have to move, this shouldn't be happening.
And Ayya Khema emphasizes that karma is made first by thought.
First by thought, then speech, then action. The very moment you have that negative thought, I don't like it, you've already made slightly negative karma.
So we don't even need to move or speak. The suffering is generated internally the second we react.
Absolutely. The suffering isn't the pain itself. The suffering is the reaction to the pain. If we want to transcend this constant problem, we have to transcend these instinctive reactions.
This brings us to the practice of detachment. And it requires actively questioning our deepest assumptions about ownership.
So when that unpleasant feeling arises, instead of reacting, you use wisdom. You ask, I didn't ask for this feeling, it just arose, so why am I calling it mine?
Isn't it just an event that happened to this body and mind, which are themselves impermanent?
That simple question fosters detachment. The suffering only arises because we add resistance and craving. Without that, the unpleasant feeling is just a sensation. No psychological stress arises.
This process sounds like the only way out of the whole cycle, right? Because there's one specific junction where we can intervene.
And that's the most empowering realization of the entire teaching. The only accessible doorway out of the worldly cycle lies in that tiny gap between feeling and craving.
All the other steps, ignorance, consciousness, and so on, they're just automatic once the cycle starts.
They're cause and effect. But here, between feeling and craving, we have a choice. We have an opportunity for liberation.
So unless we learn to live with all feelings, pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral, without automatically reacting, we just stay on the wheel forever.
The practice is non-reaction. It's developing equanimity, upekkha. That is the critical action for freedom.
We have to become the master of our emotional landscape.
Not its victim. And every single time you succeed, every time you fail to respond impulsively to a feeling, to not move, to not complain, to not judge, you gain a little bit of power over yourself, and that builds real inner confidence.
But I need to challenge this, because the sources make a really clear distinction between equanimity and its near enemy, which is indifference.
That's an essential clarification, yes.
Isn't there a risk that learning non-reaction just leads to emotional suppression? That we just become cold and detached?
Indifference is a wall. It's self-protection. It's often built by people who've been hurt, and it's a way to suppress all emotion, good and bad. It closes the heart. It leads to cynicism, to apathy.
And true equanimity is different how?
Equanimity is born of insight. It's the realization that feelings are not mine to control, but they are still allowed to flow through you. Equanimity doesn't block compassion or loving kindness at all.
In fact, they flow more easily.
More easily because they're not tainted by the desire for reward or reciprocation or personal gain. Indifference shuts down engagement. Equanimity allows engagement without the personal turbulence.
That opens the heart and brings us beautifully into Section 4, the highest emotions and the danger of attachment. This is about the Brahma Vihara, the divine abodes.
The 4 supreme emotions to cultivate: loving kindness or metta, compassion, karuna, sympathetic joy, mudita, and ignanity upeka.
The whole spiritual path is one of purification.
It's about constantly seeing our inner difficulties and learning to drop them. Meditation is the vehicle for practicing the art of letting go of everything except these highest, most purified states.
So let's drill down on loving kindness, metta, because it's often confused with just affection or friendliness.
Metta is a warm, kind feeling, but here's the key. It is not contingent on the other person being worthy or loving you back or being your friend.
It's an active state of wishing well for all beings.
And it's strictly a matter of clearing out the negative reactions in yourself. The primary benefit of radiating metta is your own purification. Dislike, ill will, hatred, they're never justified. Metta is the inner state of wishing no harm.
But the subtle enemy of metta, the one we often cherish, is affection. Why would affection, which seems so positive, be an obstruction?
This is a point that requires some careful handling, especially for us as lay people. Affection is based on attachment and partiality.
You mean if we are attached to just a few specific people, our family, our friends, that partiality becomes a barrier?
It acts as a barrier. You get stuck in a limited circle of concern. Universal loving-kindness requires you to reach outward to all sentient beings without distinction. Attachment to one small group obstructs that.
I have to push back here, because for the listener this can sound impossible. Are you saying a parent shouldn't feel affection for their child?
Yeah.
How do you do this without becoming cold or negligent?
And that's the critical misunderstanding. The instruction is not to stop caring. It's about purifying that love of clinging and possessiveness. True love wishes the best for the other person's growth and freedom, even if that means they move away or choose a different path. Affection, based on attachment, says, I love you, so I need you to stay close, fulfill my expectations, and not get hurt.
The second one is self-serving. It creates suffering.
Right. The first one, pure loving kindness, is unconditional. It releases the object of your love.
So we need to balance this outward focus with our own internal state. This brings us to self-acceptance versus ego-centeredness.
Loving yourself is the necessary first step. Finding ease with yourself, being pleasant to be alone with, that's spiritual health.
But pure love for yourself doesn't include ego-centered bias.
Exactly. That's the restless desire to be more, to be cleverer, to be more special, to constantly compare yourself to others. If we don't want anything, not even a scratch, to happen to ourselves, that's affection toward the self. And that's still attachment. It's still based on the illusion of me.
The ultimate practice, then, is to extend this purified feeling outward, treating it as a spiritual project.
Yes. Practice metta toward your neighbors, strangers, and especially toward difficult people. The stronger your inner purity of loving kindness, the more it uplifts your entire environment, just as a natural emanation.
And this purification is so necessary because the underlying problem, which is right at the center of the wheel of dependent arising, is ego delusion.
And the 3 roots of suffering. If you look at the classic depiction of the wheel, that little inner circle holds the unwholesome roots that drive everything.
The snake, the cock, and the pig.
The snake represents hate, carrying its poison. The cock represents greed, always wanting more, always chasing. And the pig signifies delusion, rolling in the mud, covering its head so it can't see reality.
And delusion is the one that drives the whole system.
Delusion is the fundamental blindness. It's the ignorance that lets us believe that temporary things are permanent and controllable. These 3 roots, they bite each other's tails. It's a closed loop of suffering, and delusion is what feeds both greed and hate.
So our entire spiritual life is aimed at cutting the head off the pig, transcending ego delusion.
That's the goal.
To do that, we need a mind that is not just moral and mindful, but supremely concentrated. This leads us into Section 5, the heights of concentration, the meditative absorptions, the jhanas.
But before you can even get there, you have to abandon the 5 hindrances.
These are the mental pollutants that block that deep calm.
And they have to be consciously abandoned. First, sensual desire, that constant longing for external gratification. Second, ill will or hate, which we counteract with loving kindness. Third, sloth and torpor, that mental dullness or physical heaviness that just makes the mind sluggish.
And then the ones related to mental turbulence.
Fourth is restlessness and worry. And fifth is skeptical doubt.
You know, I found the discussion on worry especially helpful for the modern mind. The sources describe it as totally absurd.
It is completely illogical, and here's why. The person who is worrying today does not remain the same person who will experience that future. The body and mind are in constant flux. They're impermanent processes.
We cling to this illusion of continuity.
But the reality is the entity that's worrying now is not the same one that will experience the feared outcome. When you really grasp impermanence, worry just loses its hook.
And once the mind is clear of these pollutants, the jhanas become accessible. The Buddha called this the pleasure path.
He was explicit. He said, "This is a pleasure I will allow myself." He contrasted it with the gross, dependent, and ultimately disappointing pleasures of the senses.
And the jhanas are superior because they are independent of the outside world.
Exactly. They are self-generated states of profound bliss and stability. They offer the meditator a sense of mastery, of having found happiness internally at will.
So let's walk through the progression of the four main absorptions. They each build on the last. Let's start with the first jhana.
This is the initial entry. It's characterized by initial and sustained mental application. But critically, this is accompanied by piti, these rapturous, pleasant physical sensations, a physical bliss.
Like the body is drenched with delight.
And emotional joy, sukha. This intense pleasure is born purely from detachment from the senses.
As concentration deepens, we move to the second jhana, and some of those entry factors drop away.
The second jhana is much more refined. That initial and sustained application, it's gone because the concentration is now stable. The focus shifts entirely to the emotional joy, sukha.
This is a powerful state.
Very. It inspires this deep, unshakable confidence. Not arrogance, but the certainty that happiness can be sourced internally. And that lessens your need for outside validation or support. You become less dependent on the world.
Then, even the excitement of joy has to be let go of to move deeper into the third jhana.
In the third jhana, that intense joy is deliberately relinquished. It's replaced by profound contentment and deep peacefulness or equanimity.
And the core insight here is that peace only comes from wishlessness.
That's it. The mind drops down, feeling this immense depth, realizing that any desire, any wanting only hurts you. The meditator then tries to carry that contentment into daily life.
And finally, the fourth jhana.
This is a state of absolute, purified stillness, unwavering equanimity. It transcends the duality of happy and unhappy, pleasure and pain. Even the peacefulness of the third state is dropped, leaving behind this rock-solid, one-pointed consciousness.
And that state is the necessary launchpad for deep, liberating insight.
It is.
But the sources stress that even with all this self-generated bliss, there is a constant danger.
Clinging. It is the ultimate subtle trap. It is absolutely crucial not to cling to these pleasant states.
If you meditate only to feel blissful, you're still bound.
You are. That is considered the wrong path. We have to be prepared to experience the impermanence of pleasant feelings, just as we train ourselves to accept the impermanence of unpleasant ones. They arise, they pass, we let them go.
Which transitions us now into Section 6, the ultimate objective of this whole journey: insight, corelessness, and nibbana. If calm is the means, insight is the goal.
The knowledge and vision of things as they really are, the ultimate target is anatta, or corelessness.
The first step is to systematically delineate mind and matter, to move past this innate perception of me as one solid thing.
You begin to experience yourself as two different, dependent but functionally separable phenomena, mind and body.
And how does that separation change the experience of suffering?
For an enlightened person, they are troubled only by the body, not by the mind. They still feel the physical pain of a toothache or the fatigue of old age.
But the mind no longer reacts to it.
The mind doesn't have to react with mental suffering or aversion or desire for it to be different. The mental mechanism of dukkha is broken.
And we have to confront this illusion of ownership, that we possess this body.
The sources really highlight the philosophical absurdity of the I as an owner. The body is constantly changing, aging, needing constant maintenance.
Food, sleep.
Moving toward decay and death. If you truly owned your body, or the master of it, why do you have no say over its sickness, its aging, its mortality?
You can't prevent a single gray hair or a headache by sheer willpower.
No. The idea of me as the owner is a deeply erroneous assumption that comes purely from habit.
To help break this down, the Buddha delineated three types of acquired selves that we mistakenly identify with.
This is a subtle but crucial point. First is the gross acquired self. This is simply the physical body, the four elements nourished by material food. When you feel a hunger pang, you're identifying with the gross self.
The second one is maybe the most difficult illusion for a dedicated meditator to shed.
I agree, that's the mind-made acquired self. This is your identification with the observer, the knower, your thoughts, reactions, feelings.
The meditator who says, I am the one watching the breath.
That watcher, that observer, that sense of internal agency, that is the mind-made self. We take the consciousness that is witnessing the process to be me.
And the third type is the most rarefied, arising only in the highest states of calm.
The formless acquired self. This is the identification with perception or pure consciousness that can arise in the high, formless jhanas, like the sphere of infinite space. Even at that subtle, immaterial level, the sense of my perception or my consciousness creates duality and clinging.
So what's the ultimate insight from distinguishing these three acquired selves?
The key insight is that only one of these selves is present at any given time. When you're deeply concerned with a bodily injury, the gross self, the mind-made self, that internal commentator, is often silent.
And when you're lost in deep thought, the mind-made self, you forget the gross self.
They're all temporary conditional illusions. True liberation is realizing that the entire concept of the self is just an intellectual construction built on these shifting phenomena.
The final step, the moment of liberation, is known as path and fruition, starting with stream entry, or sotapadhi, and it requires a total letting go.
Primarily of that notion of selfhood, there's a wonderful analogy from the Visuddhimagga, the river analogy.
Worldly life is the near bank, and nibbana is the far bank.
Right, and you use the momentum of your practice, that's the rope of Dhamma, to swing across the river. But you're still holding on to the branch of selfhood, the idea of me doing the swinging.
And at the right moment, you have to let go of everything.
You let go of the rope, the practice itself, and the branch, the self, and you drop down onto the far bank. The letting go must be total.
In that moment, the experience of fruition is characterized by such specific, undeniable feelings.
It is always characterized, first and foremost, by a moment of total, profound relief. As if an enormous, lifelong burden, the burden of being me, has finally been laid down.
Sometimes accompanied by tears of release.
But most significantly, it brings the certain visceral knowledge that for a single, luminous mind moment, nobody was there. The entire person illusion was eliminated. That deeply profound experience is what shatters delusion.
And for the stream enterer, that one vision permanently shatters three major fetters.
The first one is the right view of self. That fixed illusion of a permanent me is gone forever. The second is skeptical doubt. Doubt in the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, and most importantly, in your own ability to achieve liberation. That just disappears.
Because you've seen the truth directly.
And the third is the belief in rites and rituals as a means to liberation. You see them as non-essential scaffolding. The stream enterer is now securely on the path to final enlightenment.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Ayya Khema's guidance, we come back to that initial requirement, she said. Commitment.
That's right. You've been given the roadmap, but the choice to walk it is unavoidable.
And the commitment has to be total.
You only become truly ready to immerse yourself in the Dhamma when you realize, without a shadow of a doubt, that the path of worldly striving will never, ever provide a lasting way out of dukkha.
If you're still looking for a loophole, still thinking happiness is in the next achievement,
the commitment will remain incomplete.
and this requires not just the intellect, but the heart.
Intellectual understanding engages the mind, but if the heart doesn't open up and love the teaching, you remain stuck in mere knowledge. And knowledge can't free you. This path involved turning yourself inside out, exposing everything. That requires a total loving dedication.
You know, our sources reference a powerful tradition about the unique timing of this opportunity.
There's a great prophecy that the Dhamma will last 5,000 years. And the commentary suggests there would be a 100-year period of upswing when the teaching reaches the West in an unprecedented way.
And given that tradition, we're in a unique window of time right now.
Which makes this opportunity for insight incredibly rare. The message is one of urgency. Time should not be wasted on non-essentials.
So what does this all mean? If we put aside the complexity of the jhanas and the philosophy of Anatta, what's the single final provocative thought for you, the listener, to carry away from all this?
It connects right back to the source of all truth. It eliminates the need to search outside yourself, the Buddha said. The whole of the universe, O monks, lies in this fathom-long body and mind.
The entire cosmos of understanding is right here within us.
Yes. This profound statement implies that the answers, the entire map to liberation, are already within you. And the inquiry into this inner universe, it only requires one thing.
What's that?
Faith in ourselves. The faith that you possess the inherent potential to find the truth within, and that allows you to let go of looking for external support, for gurus, for complicated rituals. When you look inward with that self-faith, you find relief, release, freedom, and total liberation. The entire journey starts and ends right here.